Welcome to CTV, and with the new coach of the Collingwood Football Club, Nathan Buckley. Bucks, are you a bit excited, mate?
Absolutely. It's a great honour to have the position and to be entrusted with the responsibility. Big organisation, big club, great support all around Australia and all over the world through our internet sites. And the last couple of years we've performed pretty well on field. Obviously a couple of grand finals and one flag, but we've got a playing group that can still contend. So the challenge is to keep improving. Do you feel like you've prepared yourself as well as you possibly can 2 years in the job as an assistant coach? Yeah, look, 4 years out of the game since playing, and 2 as an assistant coach, and I think I'm as ready as you ever can be. You hear speaking to people who have gone into a senior coaching position and the enormity of the role. But ultimately, it's about the football program. It's about the people that you have around you and the knowledge that they bring with them. We have a lot of very good people in very important positions in the football department and right through the football club for that matter. So I'm not an island, and the club will succeed or fail together, and it won't be for any lack of hard work or input from plenty of people. Your grounding has been comprehensive. You've fulfilled a number of roles in the 2 years as being assistant coach. Just talk about that in terms of how much ground you've covered. Yeah, well, first year in 2010, I came on board as the forwards coach, and then last year as the opposition coach. But within those roles, you're sort of obviously dealing with match committees, forming relationships with players, dealing with the sports science guys and putting together training planning, etc. So I mean, it's all the coaching stuff that most people would know. I think there's a real advantage in having been in the environment and being able to plan for sort of what I knew was coming up, and really what the whole of the football club knew was coming up. So, and obviously to have a person with Mick's experience and knowledge, and to be learning from him as a coach after learning from him as a player for so long is... How different was that? Because that was... I was interested in that in terms of playing as a captain under Mick Malthouse and then being an assistant coach. How different was that in terms of what you learnt? It's probably not as different as many would suspect. I think as a leader within the playing group, you actually are dealing with the coach quite intimately about the environment, about the culture that you're working in. Fundamentally, the senior coach is the driver of that culture, and the captain, as such, is his conduit, his intermediary to the rest of the playing group. So that role that relationship is very close. I think the relationship of assistant coach and coach becomes not dissimilar in regards to, you throw ideas up, put up information, concepts, and ultimately the senior coach is there to make the decisions at the end of the day based on which way he believes the club should go with all the information on the table. So really not dissimilar. So those 2 years as assistant coach and the 10 years before it as a player have helped shape me. Now, Mick Malthouse has described your relationship with him as a professional working relationship. You're not great mates, as he has tended to identify a couple of other of his assistant coaches. How would you describe the relationship with Mick? Yeah, well, probably the way Mick has said it. I mean, Mick quite often has said that you think that you've got more mates than you actually have in footy, and when you leave the game, if you leave with a handful, like 3 or 4 or 5 mates, well then you've done pretty well. So, and Mick and I haven't caught up for dinner that often, but we get on very well, and probably describing it as a professional relationship is pretty right. But we've gone through a lot of times together. We've shared some highs and some lows, but through it all, I think he has really been a great mentor to myself and to other people in the football department, and yeah, look, I hope that I can provide the same sort of support to others as he did to me. The agreement that
saw you taking over from Mick Malthouse has been played out in the media, in the public environment for certainly the last few months in particular. Has that been difficult? You have remained silent. Has that been a difficult thing to do with things going on around you?
No, not at all. Look, I think it's important for people to understand the role that they play within the club, and to make sure that they do it to the best of their ability. And that's all I've ever focused on doing.
Now, your first coach at Collingwood, Lee Matthews, said a few weeks ago, given the success of Collingwood and Mick Malthouse at the helm, and suggested that you should stand aside for Mick Malthouse to continue as coach. Now, this was well before the grand final. What was your reaction to that?
I've spoken to Lee various occasions about what was happening and the transition that's in place. His messages to me were to believe in yourself and make sure that you're very strong and very positive about the way you're going to go about it. Fundamentally, this is about the footy program. It's not a Mick versus Nathan situation, and that's the way it's been played out publicly.
But I mean, his comments suggested that because of the success of Collingwood under Mick, that you should go back on the agreement that was settled on a couple of years ago and stand aside for another year or another 2 years. I mean, did you talk about that? Did you think about that? Did that ever enter your mind that you might do that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think if you're not making decisions for the betterment of the football club, well then you're not making the right decisions. So I did contemplate that at times in my quiet moments, I suppose. But I fundamentally believe, as do a lot of key stakeholders within the football club, that we've got an opportunity to develop, an opportunity to grow our football program. It's not ever about one person, and I sort of wondered if it was about one person, well then we'd probably leave the status as it was. But there's fundamentally that there are very important people in place. Derek Hine as head recruiter and list manager, David Butterfant, the director of sports science, obviously Jeff Walsh as a director of football. So there's probably three very important people.
So what was the key thought when you made your decision and thought, no, this agreement was in place, I feel I'm ready? I mean, when was the moment, or what was the key thought when you decided that the agreement should stay as it was arranged 2 years ago?
Right along.
Okay.
It really has been right along.
Okay.
The football club undertook a couple of years ago that this was a transition that they thought was appropriate. I believe that there's some opportunities that will come from this shift, this change in position that may not have come otherwise.
Yep.
Now, change is always difficult, change is hard, but if you don't change, you're going to go backwards. And I think the club's got a real opportunity to lock down what it's very good at, and to look at some other areas to improve in. And it's hard to say that without sounding like you're denigrating the past, but the fact is that your future always needs to be better. And Mick has always seen it that way. I know David Butterfant, Jeff Walsh, Derek Hine see it that way, and it'll be important that the players understand that what we've done before is not going to be enough for what we're going to do when we go forward.
Rodney Eade comes on board in a strategic type role, but will be involved day to day. Did you have an input into that decision? Because clearly he'll be, from certainly the outside, he'll be working closely with you. Yeah,
I did, and Rocket's going to be fantastic. I mean, his role as football and coaching strategist, he'll work very closely with the coaches and help develop them in a sense. And it's a role that, I suppose it's been part of the senior coach's role in the past, but that role has got so huge that you really to have Rocket on board to focus on that and make sure that we are developing our coaching panel to its optimum.
Will he be in the coach's box on a Saturday or a Friday night?
Yeah, well, that's yet to be discussed.
Part of it? Okay.
That's yet to be discussed, but I'd anticipate that he would.
The role that he will fulfil was the effective role that Mick Malthouse was going to fulfil for the next 3 years.
Yep.
Did you have an issue with Mick being in the coach's box over the next 3 years, helping you?
We were quite cognizant of the fact that there was going to be a transition period that was going to be important. So I suppose we were looking initially in the first year about providing that space for the players make that transition.
And for you?
Yeah, I suppose. And from Mick being the senior coach
Yep.
to me being the senior coach. So I think the roles in the first part were going to look a little bit different to how they were going to settle. And part of that was of course, how visible Mick was at the early stages. But that was discussed in good faith, and ultimately it hasn't come to fruition. But I would have loved to have Mick at the football club.
Right.
I think
in the coach's box as well on match day.
I think ultimately, that would have been where it ended up.
Okay.
But in the end, it's the individual needs to want to do what he's being asked to do by the organisation, and as Mick has preached often, it's about the greater good. And really, he said himself, he feels like the decision he's made is for the greater good, because in his heart of hearts, he doesn't feel like he can fulfil the role that's been asked of him.
You talked earlier about the quality of your list. What are your expectations next year?
Our expectations
in terms of performance.
Yeah, well, to continue to be as successful
to
as
win
we
a premiership?
have in the past. Absolutely, absolutely. If you're not in it for that caper, I think then, especially in the position we're in, we've got some pretty raw wounds at the moment. We've got some players that rightfully, and coaches and the football club in general, that's hurting. We've just missed an opportunity to win a premiership, and the aim for us is to make sure those wounds heal in the right way, so that we are more than ready to brush ourselves off and go again. And that has to be done individually, and that has to be done collectively.
Does the loss on the weekend, the grand final, make your job next year easier or harder?
It's a hard job, whichever way you look at it. It's not an easy thing to be continually successful.
In terms of expectation, does it make it a little easier?
I don't rate expectations, not external expectations. The only expectations that count are the ones from within these four walls, and we have an expectation to be as good as we can possibly be. We have an expectation to improve continually, and if we improve from last year, well then we'll be in it when the whips are cracking.
Mate, good luck. I have no doubt you'll be a great success. Well done.
Thanks, Michael.